All right, hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. He is the master of cyber farms, Alfredzo B, Nash Jr., and I, the people's chief, Dr. Joseph J. Burt-Miller Jr., and we are your hosts of the Cyber Coffee Hour. We are products of Mount Vernon, New York, sharing our experiences and stories and sharing those of our amazing guests. We aim to share knowledge, elevate understanding, and foster a sense of belonging in this vast cyberspace. So for today's show, we will have a coffee chat with senior cybersecurity and information technology strategy specialist, Sarah Cleveland. Now, Sarah Cleveland has over 26 years of experience in the Air Force as a career cyber officer. Retiring as a colonel, Sarah has led at the squadron, group, and joint directorate levels. She has been responsible for providing combat cyber operation effects and lead infrastructure modernization and sustainment of large scale efforts. Her operational experience includes combat operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other areas in the Middle East, as well as training Colombian and Polish special operations forces in cyber and communications tactics. Sarah retired in 2023 and has been driving cyber capabilities for the Department of Defense and state and local governments. Sarah Cleveland, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited because I've enjoyed speaking with you off podcast as well as leading up to this. Like, I hope to be invited back just because the conversations has been outstanding.
So yeah, very good to have you on. I know it's been a little long time coming, but we made it work. But how you been doing though? How things been going?
So it's been a really strange spring, but then again, my whole time out of uniform the transition has been really weird. Just the transition from going to military type cyber operations to the vendor side. It brings a lot of information together, but it also gives you a whole new appreciation for kind of the leadership lessons that you do learn in uniform and what we take for granted when you're in uniform, that maybe
Right.
this doesn't have that same background and you think it's just everybody does.
Right.
That's a good point.
So,
I don't think
Yeah.
everybody in sector has that.
Yeah.
but I also think it's pretty cool that Nash thinks I'm like a video game character. So
The ball so far, we're at 99% attribution.
Well, Alfredo, you got to share with the audience. Got to give a little context about the video game character.
All right, so
hit there.
mostly everyone that knows me knows I'm a huge Metal Gear fan, and in Metal Gear, there's someone called the Boss who trains out the Cobra unit. The Cobra unit is like an adversarial unit that you encounter in the Snake Eater game. And I won't spoil those for the fandom, but when she's eliminated, she's the model to train all of the snakes. We got Liquid Snake, first the Boss, Naked Snake, Liquid Snake, and then the two brother twins in the Shadow Moses scenario or Outer Haven scenario. So she was the precursor to set up all of the, after the Snake Eater operation, she was the model that all of the snake characters were trained on. And all of the missions that came after that was attributed to her being, trying to save the world from nuclear war, allegedly.
yeah, so I'm not that person, but I kind of want to
be. Right. And then, so there's a whole, if you're a fan of the game, everybody knows that leads into the events where Naked Snake's predecessor, Liquid, is an old guy trying to fight AI in the Guns of the Patriot. So it's kind of like linked to that lineage of the Boss and Snake Eater games.
Yeah, so that AI conversation is kind of interesting because so Dr. J was at a conference in California this past week, and I was at a conference, RSA, a couple weeks ago, and nice. That was the hottest topic, I think, at all these conferences is AI.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of states are passing laws about AI and like AI is the boogeyman. But really, like, haven't we been using AI for a really long time?
Yeah. Apparently, we're in the 4th generation, allegedly. I don't get research on my research, but yeah, we're in 4 generations of it now. Or approaching.
Well, isn't AI just a fancy term for data analytics?
That's a subset. Machine learning, all of that subset.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, AI is not exactly new. It's I think with AI, it's just it's been given a catchier name, and it's just gaining more popularity. But it's not exactly new per se.
It's not new.
Yeah, it's been around for
coming
a
of
while.
age. It's coming of
Yeah,
age. It's becoming the teenager in the room now, or the millennial, whatever you want to call it. But it's
yeah.
coming of age where it's actually being applied to our systems.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and with anything as it matures, it gets better, it gets smarter. We look for different ways how we could utilize it. Different applications, use cases, what have you. So it's, I would agree. Yeah, it's not new. It didn't just get started the other day, but it's just gaining more popularity as it's matured. So, but yeah, and I for me when I was at the Google I/O conference in California, and that was a real great experience. And they definitely talked about AI a lot. They even had like an AI counter, like how many times they said AI during the conference. So
Did you
Nice.
but
have a final number?
it's I don't have it on hand. It's at least a couple hundred. It's pretty high,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's like every year there has to be like a buzz topic to talk about. I think last year was zero trust,
hmm
Yeah.
which was like everybody was talking about it. I mean, they still are, but I think it's in a different sort of urgency. I think people figured out zero trust is really hard to do.
and Alfredo, do you remember? I mean, not too long ago. I mean, cloud was pretty much AI the way AI
Seems
is
like
right now. Cloud
seems
was the
like yesterday.
biggest the buzzword.
I was
Hmm.
just talking to another friend about this. Shout out to Nick. He knows out in Mount Vernon, and they predate. He said they're precursors. So cloud computing got supplanted by the gaps in cloud computing, right?
Right.
So cyber took the lead. Then all the patterns in cyber, zero trust included, were to close the gaps in cloud computing and cloud security. Now, you heard it here first. My prediction or my trend is AI is going to find the gap in all the cybersecurity operations, machine learning operations included.
And then,
Right?
yeah. So I had that. So that was the conversation I had with a friend of mine. It was like, we're going to teach an app to fish.
Yeah. And we're going to teach an
So
app to bypass the defenders. I'm just saying, you heard, don't blame me. But yeah, a model can countermeasure and attack and defend at the same time. Right. That puts me. I hope I'm retired by this time, but it puts me out of the game.
So
You
and
know,
then what happens with quantum?
it just becomes the same thing that's happening with we're getting onto that planned obsolescence. The same thing that happens with quantum is what's happening with Kubernetes and the big boy clusters now, the super clusters. So you're not going to be able to run the AIs without running a quantum compute cluster. Because I'm an infrastructure guy, so I'm betting on infrastructure. Right. In order
Yeah.
for us to get the AI regulation we need, well, it needs to supplant the Kubernetes and super clusters. And then we build those AIs on quantum. By the way, this is also from Guns of the Patriots. Hideo Kojima, if he ever sees his shout out, he put that in the Guns of the Patriots, and you had to go against a data center that was a quantum compute, living, breathing, thinking data center in the game. Right? So that's straight out of video game lore right there for you. That the quantum will supplant today's superclusters, which we've seen cloud computing, high performance computing, distributed. I'm gonna go off in a second, so let me cook. Distributed computing got supplanted, and now we have cyber. So the byproduct of that is where we are in our industry today. Cyber gets supplanted by quantum, and then AI does the cyber task, right? And then that's where we have, oh God, what are we gonna do for jobs at that point? But quantum these AI regulators. I hope they're thinking of this. And you heard this playbook here. These AIs, these super AIs, will be on quantum compute clusters. That's the only way they could be regulated. And then they get out of human calculations. They get out of our grasp, right? So we got to wrap some kind of regulation around those too, and the chip makers that build those quantum environments. So that's my prediction. I'm trying to, get my eggs and coffee in the same basket and hope that, you know, that is sooner rather than later. Later on it'll be too late.
But it all needs electricity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A whole lot of it needs city scale power plants. That's in
Yeah.
Guns of the Patriots too. It was a whole city that you
And
attacked.
that's not an infinite resource either.
Solar
Especially
isn't enough.
put in the grid you know at risk.
Well, and then my niece is a geologist up in northern Minnesota, right? So they like discovered the largest helium deposit
Yeah, you told us this offline. I
Yeah.
remember you saying that.
So now, like, when we start talking about electricity and start talking about those microchips, like, we have to start, like, where does your food come from? It doesn't come from the grocery store, right? So where does your microchip come
Right.
from? It doesn't come from Best Buy.
Mm.
So we have to start, like, probably thinking about mineral mining and that sort of thing a little bit differently than we do
Right.
now. Because, being self-reliant, it's really a thing.
So today on the Cyber Coffee Hour, we're establishing the mother base. As a reference, also we need to provision natural resources, supply chain, operators, the whole shebang starting today with this episode.
Absolutely. So
Otherwise, we're going to
Sarah,
end up being the video game.
correct. So let's segue right that as we learn a little bit about more of your military cyber expertise, Sarah. So as you have transitioned, from a distinguished career in the Air Force, driving cyber capabilities for civilian entities, can you elaborate on like maybe like the biggest challenges and even like rewarding aspects of applying your military cyber expertise to the civilian world?
Yeah, so like I said, it's been kind of a weird year, but what's been really great is when you're in the military, like, you get given a job or a mission every 2 years, you like get a new one, but it's kind of narrow, right? So my last
Right.
job that I had in the military, I was in charge of the maintenance and operation of all of the sensors, the global sensors that detected if there was a nuclear event. So
Right.
it sounds kind of like, oh, okay, but if you peel back the onion, like, anything that vibrates in the earth, like, you have to figure out, was that an earthquake? Was that like a thunderstorm? Was that, a regular explosion? Was that a mining accident? Or was that, like, legitimately a nuclear test that wasn't, like, approved of by
Sanction or something. Right.
right. So we had sensors for vibration, that we worked with, like the National Geographic or geological departments and universities across the world, because that is helpful to understand earthquakes. It's just not what the Department of Defense does, but we can share that data. So, I mean, but that's a pretty narrow scope of responsibility. And it's also very different than the job I did before that job, which was I was in charge of the communications for the Joint Task Force National Capital Region. So if there's ever any 9/11 type event, like, our units would respond with a dual hat of, I was a G6, which is an Army position for the Military District of Washington. So, very different than doing the nuclear enterprise stuff. So, like, that's kind of the weird thing about the military is, I think, you've been in long enough, you should be able to do X, Y, or Z. And you're like, I've never done that before, and I'm only going to be doing it for 2 years. So you have about 3 months to wrap your head around, like, what you need to do. So it's not that long. So now fast forward into the private industry. I've been in the job I'm in for I would say, for about 15, 16 months. And
Okay.
they're still allowing me to learn my job. Whereas if I was in the military, I'd be almost done with my job,
So Sarah, can you
right?
back up a little bit too for our listeners? Can you explain that? You said that phrase. I've often heard it on the private side a lot, but for our listeners, can you break down that dual-hatted
Yeah.
opportunity that you mentioned?
Yeah. So that means a job that should really be two people, they give it to one person.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
like, and you kind of can do that with a joint task force job, because that joint task force only gets stood up if there's a problem, right? So when I say 9/11 type event, so when the planes crashed into the Pentagon, the Joint Task Force National Capital Region, they're like, oh, we probably should have a unit that can respond to something like this. So when you need a unit like that, is too late to have a unit like that. So they developed this task force so that they sit there at Fort McNair and they wait for something bad to happen. And that's sort of controlled, not sort of, it is controlled out of NORAD Northcom in Colorado Springs. So Department of Homeland Defense, NORAD Northcom, right? So when something bad happens, they say, okay, like activate the Joint Task Force, and then they do. But meanwhile, like you have all these people sitting around waiting, twiddling their thumbs. So we have capacity. So we're going to make you the lead communicator for the National Capital Region Military District of Washington as well, which is another job. So 2 jobs, which is fine. You should be able to do that. So when you have like one sort of job and one full-time job, then, I mean, it's like a job and a half kind of job.
Right.
So, it's not anything different from like everybody else in America trying to make ends meet and having to have 6 jobs in order to pay for housing. Because,
right.
That's a whole different topic.
Whole nother episode.
Yeah, I think that's a different show, actually. But it could be the same show because I really do believe in my heart of hearts that the internet should be a utility and classified as a utility, because they're like you get charged money when you go in and want to speak to a bank teller. My 86-year-old mother doesn't understand that you have to bank online now.
Yeah.
And she does not have internet. My mom does not have internet, and she lives in a house with steel siding, so when I go to visit her, my cell phone doesn't even get, it's like she lives in a skiff. But there are still people in America who don't have internet. They just don't. And it's hard to live that way. Anyway, that's like a different show.
Yeah, so that plays into the next question we have for you, right? It sounds like you witnessed the cyber threat landscape rapidly transform throughout your military service. What are the concerning trends you see today, and how can organizations, both sides of the fence, I'm guessing, best prepare for the emerging threats in that cyber landscape? Because this is a favorite topic of ours as well.
Yeah, well, so like it's changing so quickly, right? I mean, you can kind of see it now with Israel, Iran, Russia. Like Iran hardly ever took account for their cyber attacks. Like it would be like, oh, it's an individual hacker or a proxy that is doing stuff on behalf of Iran. Like recently, Iran has been like, yeah, we did that, which is a change and kind of scary, because usually they're like,
why would they're self-attributing, right? But how does that play into geopolitics for organizations they're attacking? Like, how does that play into, yeah.
They're saying to everybody, look, we're a player and we're important. We know how to do this. Wow. It's all a big like posturing, especially in the Middle East. Iran is making a play to be equal with the world's powers.
They want to show that they're top dog.
Yeah.
Like, yo, we did this.
And so that posturing in itself is an emerging threat. The fact that they're poking their chest out is a threat for most folks in their cyber threat.
Yeah, because they're saying, I know how to do this. We can play. We can play. And cyber in itself isn't necessarily, when something goes down, like you usually see cyber activity, and then you'll see some other activity, and then you'll see bombs. Like usually an act of cyber warfare is to chase people back to the table and be like, we can do this. We could do it on a bigger scale. Maybe you should come back here and make a deal with us.
Right, and that plays into bridging the gap between offensive and cyber defensive operations. Your experience encompasses both, it sounds like, both cyber offense and defensive operations. How critical is it to understand both sides of the coin in today's super complex cyber environment? I mean, it's full careers, it's full teams, like you said. Some of us are dual-hatted. I could say it openly. I have been dual-hatted, right, in the private sector. And how can this knowledge be leveraged to build more robust active defenses? Because we have the defense card here today, but how do we actively defend on both sides of the cyber operations?
Yeah, you have to know both sides, because if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you don't know how you're going to be attacked, how can you protect yourself? Additionally, like a lot of these geopolitical, sorts of things, Russia, Iran, China, their cyber activities aren't just offensive and defensive. They have included the open source and manipulation of social, as well as part of their offensive defensive strategy. Whereas the U.S. military has kind of been like, we don't want to manipulate populations. That's really not what we do, right? That's more the intel side of the world. And then you have offensive and defensive cyber, which is more of the communication side of the world. But like China, Russia, gloves are off. They're not going to fight fair.
It's a street brawl now.
It's like there's no Geneva Convention they're going to follow. Gloves are off.
You almost forget about that, honestly.
Well, expand upon that. What do you mean? Because again, y'all have the military experience. What do you mean? How does so you're saying the rest of the world forgets about those conventions that our military operate on, those conventions, right? They don't abide by them, right?
It's pretty much like the rules of war. So yeah, when you say like for the Geneva Convention, and this is just my opinion, I just feel like it's not even being considered the way things are playing out. And also too, the Geneva Convention was before cyber operations was even existed. So has the Geneva Convention been updated to reflect that, to include cyber ops, AI, or you know what I mean? So
you heard it here first.
So that's why I feel like it's. That's why I feel like it's not being considered.
I think the lawyers are working on it. However, when you start going into, for example, hospitals, and how many people have pacemakers and whatnot that with an EMP?
Right. Yeah, done.
Well, we don't. Well, okay, hold on. Because I watched a series way back in the day called 24, right? The EMP, right? Is that cyber enabled today? We thought that was science fiction 10 and 15 years ago for both cyber and defensive operations, right? Is that something that we're seeing in cyber operations? Is that hypothetical EMP capability, like knocking out a hospital or knocking out transit lines? Like we've seen that in the geopolitical sense, but is that actually attributed to cyber operations?
Well, I just put in an EMP shielded whatchamacallit in my garage. So
Sarah's ready. Okay. So yes.
So my battery pack is EMP shielded. So the United States military is spending a lot of money to EMP shield buildings, specific buildings. So EMP is a concern, especially in electronic warfare, and to the point of electronic warfare. It kind of went out of vogue for a while, and the U.S. military divested themselves of doing a lot of electronic warfare stuff. Russia never did. Russia is very good at EW. So I think we're playing a little bit of a catch up. But EMP I think is a real thing. I don't think it's I don't think it's something of science fiction. If it was, I don't believe the Department of Defense would be investing so much to, have EMP shielded buildings.
Yeah, but private sector's not, right? So I hear you. I that clicks with me, but you can't convince someone to see so today. That's a reality.
Yeah, which is why you should always have a car in your garage that's older than the both of you.
But that even goes. But like Alfredo, that even goes to why some organizations still don't want to give the appropriate amount of money or resources towards even just a cyber department.
Right.
Like why? Because if they're not seeing it actually happen or like an actual attack happen, like man, why am I investing all this money each year? Like all right, I'm gonna cut out the cyber team or cut out the cyber department, whatnot. Until it takes till something happens for them to be like, oh, okay, all right, I think we need to get this stood up. But I think it's kind of that same type of mindset, it's if they're not seeing it, actually happen as opposed to trying to be proactive. I think a lot of when it comes to when you try to like budgeting and things of that nature for organization. They're trying to be more reactive than proactive. So they wait
Yeah,
until something happens, then they want to take action. But then it's like it's too late. You already been embarrassed. Everyone knows what happened. You already had the breach. As opposed to putting the money in, set up the resources, doing what I should do to fortify your organization, to have that cyber defense in place so that it doesn't happen. To me, when everything is quiet, that means you're doing a good job. I don't want anything to happen. I don't want to react. I want to get in front of it. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
well, because it's so quiet, you didn't make the investment. It's probably already happening to you.
Yeah, we've seen that in industry. It's already happening.
Yeah.
Just don't. There's a lot of folks in the industry say it's already happened. You just don't know, right? So we
Right.
hear that a lot in industry. And then to your point you made earlier, we need to start. We're just talking about cyber operations, defensive and offense. You made a point earlier where I've only seen one employer invest in threat intelligence in my whole career. In my whole private sector career, I've only really seen one, or maybe one in a possible play in the spades game here. But I've only seen one really say full camp post breach, we need cyber threat intel. We needed it. We had it, right? We just didn't full line item put the stakes in to ensure that we know where the adversaries are hitting us at. Ops is not ops. I'm not going to knock anybody in the role, but cyber ops like the SOCs and all those things, great. That's a defensive measure, but the proactive measure is not there unless you have threat intel. My professional opinion, right? Because like you said, nobody knows China and Iran is stepping their game up. In a corporate environment, absolutely not. And then they're not correlating that to every business sector. Now, people who know me have heard me had this rant before, like for years. They're not coordinating it to each business sector, each unit that does a thing for the general populace and servicing United States citizens. Let's just say, for example, or even a supermarket. To your point, I can't say Kroger and them have a cyber threat intel team. I can look for it, but
Yeah.
those are valuable targets in the private side, right? So we're in. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. So that brings up an interesting point about what CISA and the reporting rules, right? Are you guys tracking that one? So they came out with, for public comment, that post breach 72 hours, everybody has to report to CISA.
Them and SEC. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. 72. Yes, I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now though too, instead of reporting to X, Y, or Z, like you just report to CISA. So that said, they said this is for critical infrastructure. But if you read through it, their definition of critical infrastructure is not just like water and power. Their definition of critical infrastructure is more of the COVID definition of critical infrastructure. Your grocery stores, your gas stations, it's very broad. Banking, like that's all been deemed critical infrastructure. And so, I mean, this will get interesting because I'm not sure there's a bite to fines or, whatever to the companies who don't report, but
I feel I was already part of critical infrastructure. I mean, I think if anything, maybe they were pulling out certain aspects of it because even as you say, banking, we still have the financial sector is a sector of critical infrastructure.
Yeah, but
And
to
so what do you
Sarah's
think?
point, I don't think it encompasses a grocery store, a church, a school center, like the things that we are seeing. I mean, even a law firm, you mentioned it before. Some of the lawyers got to step their game up too now. The things that aren't that we would know in cyber that are connected to the internet and the little segments of the internet that are affected in these industries, like a grocery store. I mean, we see the smart cash registers now. We see the online Instacarts to your door. We've seen that for years, but it hasn't been deemed, at least in my career, like critical infrastructure. What happens if I stop Wegmans or Amazon or Whole Foods supply chain? Well, that ties to a bigger sector, food and beverage, right? We could put it together.
But I definitely agree because I mean, going back a couple of years when COVID hit, when we we had those long lines, out of the supermarkets, everyone trying to get food at the same time, everyone fighting for toilet paper, which I still don't understand why people would stock up so much on that. But no, yeah. If we and also you still need people to be there to be in those stores. So what happens if those those people working at either the Wegmans or different Target, what have you, if they're sick and they're compromised and they can't be there, then what happens? The store shuts down. Yeah, that is. Yeah, I could definitely see how that is critical infrastructure, because now you can't even provide food for your own family to get back, because that's taking us out of our normal, I guess, operation, for lack of a better term. And then, I mean, God forbid. So let's say you let a whole bunch of people know, say, hey, sorry, we're closed. We don't have enough people to man the stations. People are gonna start taking it to their own hands. It's gonna be straight up anarchy. They're
Gonna
gonna
be the
be like,
division.
all right, we're just gonna go in and take it. I try to be orderly, but I've been standing on this line for 2 hours. Now you gonna tell me I can't get in? Nah.
Yeah,
Especially like those with like little kids, little babies. Formula was a big deal too. People to try and find formula for their kids.
My daughter
and
was 3 when she asked me, "Dad, where's the food?" She literally during that
Oh,
pandemic, she was 3, and that put me on alert. You see, so you're
hmm
right. Being on that conscious mind, I don't want to be one of those guys that have to figure out where is that. I really don't.
yeah, and
you know,
it's so weird to me to see a grocery store with empty shelves. Like,
yeah, I
granted,
never.
a lot of people in the world, they're used to seeing random shelves with no food on them, but like I wasn't,
Nope. Only time I
so
seen that is when I was a kid and the Pathmark's power went out. I think people remember Pathmark back where
Yeah,
we're
I
from.
remember it, Pathmark. Yeah.
Yeah, that one time in my whole life I could think that the store was empty. It's because the power had went out, and that was it. So there's your other point, Sarah.
yeah. So
They're linked, right? They're directly linked.
yeah, so the grid, everybody likes to talk about the grid, but
hmm
yeah, so it's little bit daunting to think about it, because this is also a way to manipulate the population. Like, you just make sure they can't get toilet paper, and you've seen what happens. I mean, and that's
Amazing.
toilet paper.
Right.
not
Um,
not steaks,
Toilet paper and
blueberries,
sanitizer was a big. Those were
right?
the hot items then.
I mean, people got in fistfights over paper products. Crazy.
It's
People
nuts.
people apparently start fights and standing in lines too long too. I had experience like that in Sam's Club not too long ago. People don't even want to stand in the lines no more like that, like
Mm.
the pandemic
Yeah,
lines.
like I don't like lines. Like, I would love to go to Disney World, but like, no.
Yo, Sarah, I'm right there with you. I definitely Instacarted it up for
There,
sure.
yeah, there's very
Instacart's critical infrastructure.
Hey, if Instacart goes down, we have a problem.
We have a real problem.
But Sarah, so your work includes training special operation forces from various countries. Why is international collaboration so critical in combating cyber threats? I mean, like, what are some successful examples?
Yeah, so like, for example, okay, Poland right now,
Mm,
they're, without the training that they've gotten to, with the NATO countries gotten together, there's a cyber center of excellence over in Europe, that was just, I mean, it's in its infancy per se, considering it's only been a few years that it's been operational. But had it not been done, I don't think Poland would be as successful as it is. I think countries of like-mindedness with regards to appreciating the freedoms that we have as a collective whole, it is a good versus evil, us against them sort of thing. The network doesn't have boundaries, so like we were talking about with Geneva Convention, and rules of law. Uh, we're going to need every capable person to have the same sight picture as the United States and our citizens, in order to like maybe combat this grid instability, or taking over our supply chains, just to keep shipping lanes open, just to keep supply chains open, just to be able to have the materials to make the things we love, so you can get that PlayStation for your kid at Christmas time. But, I don't want anybody to tell me what I can and cannot do. I don't think anybody else does either.
right.
I
But I think
remember when that's. Oh, sorry.
it's a collective, effort.
I remember when that center was stood up, because I don't know, we'll probably have to put in our show notes, but there was a city that was attacked. It was Estonia, and there was papers written. I read
hmm
papers on that scenario,
Mhm.
right? It was called the digital city, right? And they knocked out all capabilities on paper, like it was documented. So the center you're talking about was precursor by that event in geopolitics, and now we I don't know how many years is it. It's sad to say I can't even track 10 years accurately. I'm sure it's probably like 10 plus years. Now fast forward, that was the precursor to get Poland's game stepped up, right? So what in your opinion, right? Without that center, where will we be today in geopolitics if Poland didn't get on board with watching this stoner situation?
Yeah,
And the
I
U.S.
think,
for that matter, and the
well,
United
I
States.
think we'd be scrambling, right?
Okay.
To like, and I think we would also have to have more U.S. members deployed in that direction. By doing what was done, NATO's been able to do for themselves, right? So, and you've seen the upskilling issues in the United States. It's the same in the military. I mean, stuff moves at the speed of light. We're talking about AI this year, Kubernetes and quantum. I mean, it's hard to keep up, even if you're a very good cybersecurity practitioner. It's hard to keep up with all the threats, and to understand what's coming next. So having as many people who are like-minded, trained as possible, like frees up our ability to be able to respond.
So when we're looking at from like the future of a cyber warfare perspective, what are your predictions for cyber warfare? Like what emerging technologies do you see playing a significant role, and how can we ensure responsible use of these technologies in the cyber domain?
You have to give me all the hard questions, don't you?
Yeah. This is stuff we sit down and drink coffee over.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole. I never dreamed we would be where we're at. I also never dreamed that there'd be so many people who are smart on it. So I do think, you got to believe the good guys are going to win, right? Otherwise, why would you even bother getting started? But we're playing a game that we think has rules, and it kind of doesn't. So
not everybody's playing by the same rules. The rules are there, but not everyone's playing by them.
No, there aren't no rules. I mean, when you start looking at what's going down, what's up for grabs? Your electrical grid's up for grabs. Your water source is up for grabs. Why are we buying parts that make us vulnerable within the infrastructure, right, Nash? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you probably went through the Huawei debacle.
Everyone used to tell me to keep a shelf of parts from around the corner. My dad used to tell me that, like, if you can't get it from around the corner, don't buy it. And then, that's some truth, because you can't do that anymore. You can't get your, weed whacker parts from a hardware store like that. There's no certified technician to work on that. Your car, right? Who works on EVs and have diagnostic for it? Shameless plug to Nick out in Mount Vernon. But who can work on that today in the, what is it, CONUS, right? Well, who can work on that now in the United States?
So my EMP shielded inverter that I just put in my garage, I know I called it a whatchamacallit, but it's an inverter. It was assembled in Texas, but I've been avoiding posting about it on LinkedIn because every part in there is from China. But I couldn't find an inverter. Assembled in Texas was as best I could do. Right? So, and then the Texas company that owns the inverter, that owns that inverter, right? The data goes back to a data center in Shanghai. I contacted the CEO about this, and he was like, yeah, we understand it's a problem. We are moving it to a data center in Texas in October. Right.
This year?
This year. But
I'm sure they have a cybersecurity architect role open for that, right?
Well, I like my batteries because they're not a Tesla wall. And they take up, so like in your garage, wall space on your garage is pretty premium for like storing crap. So you also don't have a whole wall taken up by batteries hanging on it. It's just a cube. So it's vertical stack. But, I've been avoiding posting about the inverter because it's like, I'm going to take some hits on that for sure. Because it, like, full disclosure, Chinese parts. like 100%. Like you open the lid up and it says, this is made in China, that's made in China, this is made in China. But I challenge anybody to find me an inverter that was fully manufactured and assembled in the United States or Europe, you know.
Good
So
luck with that.
yeah, so my EMP shielded inverter probably is sending data back to Shanghai saying, you know, I'm using 10,000 watts of whatever in the middle of the night. And then
And
I
does
got the
that
DEA showing up at my door because it's like, do you have a grow house? Like,
right? And does that backhaul to your utility provider, right? Right. So that
yeah,
data is that emerging trend, and so you're saying it sounds like you're saying one of the trends in technology is these grids that could be attacked by a cyber, right?
yeah. And also collecting data on how we live and what's
Mm.
important to us. You know, I get an electrical spike every time I turn on my hair dryer. My hair dryer is pretty important. So they're going to be like, okay, at 7 o'clock
Right.
every morning, we're going to take down Cleveland's electric. Then we'll see how good she looks on Zoom, which
This
could
is
have
a
directly impact my income because it's like, oh,
uh,
we don't want to hire her. Oof,
uh,
got some
I
messed up
think I
hair.
think we get I think we could definitely adapt and overcome. So, but no,
Well, you don't
but
have
this was
anything to worry about.
hey no, I'm good.
You don't
I'm
have a
good.
hair dryer, I'm guessing.
Hey, but that's a good point. The power goes
All
off more than 2 hours. We don't have any coffee. I mean, that's that'll get me pretty aggravated.
And
I would
over
argue
time,
that's
over time, that could create a productivity issue.
Yeah, I'll be pretty aggravated.
I mean I mean we joke about it now, but like it's like those little things that maybe you know maybe that we take for granted that that's part of our daily you know way of life or like as part maybe our daily operation like as far as what we do day to day. So it's something that's disrupts our routine.
Hmm.
Yeah, it could definitely, especially if it's you know for a long period of time, it could definitely have a, it could definitely affect us negatively, whether it's coffee or it's not having the water to maybe like water your front lawn or even for not even just front lawn, but try to do your laundry in your house. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like those little things we just always assume or you just expect it to work and be there when we need it. Then when it's gone, it's like, yo, I'm
Well,
struggling out here.
Yeah, but how does
well,
that play into the warfare part? Don't we all have microgrids in our backyard?
so,
Like, don't
okay,
we all have?
okay, this has already happened, right? So
Mhm.
with COVID,
Mm,
like you
right.
talk to somebody who's got like a 22-year-old right now,
Mm.
somebody who graduated high school during COVID, like those
Mm,
kids are struggling in life,
Mm.
like in general. Um, you know, you took them out of socialization for 2 years in sort of a key developmental stage, and I, you know, I don't know,
Yeah,
like,
especially you know even young kids, you know, elementary, you know, school age kids, because even then for sure, that's definitely a critical time in their life to establish. I don't want to say relationships, but like those social skills,
yeah,
just being able to play and see their friends, but now they have to sit in front of a screen and have the discipline to sit in front of the screen for X amount of time. You know, that's pretty tough, and to try to learn and to try to because a lot of kids, you know, when they're young, they get the iPad. Ah, it's game time. You know what I'm saying? But no, like now they have to understand. Okay, it's not game time. You gotta go to school. I'm like, what? I gotta go to school. I
well,
don't.
we've also created a certain amount of fear. Like,
Fear,
Mm,
uncertainty, and doubt.
yeah, so like your ability to survive when you're fearful of a lot of stuff is very hard because Wayne taking so this goes back to like network management as well. If you want to make your network entirely safe, what do? You unplug it,
right. Yeah. You just purely just take it offline.
right? So that's like 100% safe. So
Oh,
I
you
don't
air
know.
gap it.
If I'm going hungry, I'm going to eat stuff off the ground.
Yeah.
Like kids these days, they will starve to death before they pick a piece of bread up off the floor of like a wing house and eat it.
Yeah. Right. Like there's no type of survival instincts,
Yeah, like 2 second rule, shoot. I'm going for the 30-second rule if I'm hungry.
bro.
Like,
I'm gonna make my own pesto, wild plant pesto.
so, you know, the
Absolutely.
whole like measuring risk. Like during COVID, I think everybody was risk averse, and we created sort of a generation of very risk averse people.
Oh yeah.
And when you do manage a network, sometimes you have to, and when I was in the military, we did this a lot. Like, okay, so what's flying on that plane? Like how important is it? Like how much risk can I take? Like getting you know what I mean? So you measure risk, and it's not the same measurement every single day or for every single mission. It depends. Every day it depends. So, I
Could you
mean,
see AI as a potential attack vector because of that in cyber warfare theater?
yeah, like, I mean, I think you have to measure how risky is it to use it? Like, how risky is it not to use it? I mean, if you don't use it, like, I think you're gonna be at a
There's
disadvantage.
some risk with that associated with that as well.
So, yeah.
So,
But
and this has been a definitely great conversation as we got going on. But like now, as we normally do, we like to just take a little time to learn a little bit more about our guests. So like maybe outside of the work and how they got to where they are now. And so, Sarah, we just want to ask as we start off here, just when we talk about cybersecurity, how has cyber impacted your career and like business endeavors and lifestyle?
it's okay. If you would have told my 22-year-old self this is what I would be doing, I'd be like, what? Like, no way. I graduated from college with a journalism degree. So, nothing even close. But then again, there was no such thing as cyber. When I joined the military, they looked at my diploma. It said, the School of Business and Communications. So they said, the word communications is on there. We're going to make you a communicator. So it was comm, right? So, in the infinite wisdom. And then, that was 1996. So that's when it was like hobby shopping, every network and every office. Like everybody had their own thing, and then it evolved. We can't do that anymore. That was a significant emotional event for a lot of people, that we have to bring all these networks in and make one network. So I got to kind of learn how to do this stuff from the time it was invented. Because like when I went to college, there was no internet. There was like the Dewey Decimal System.
My favorite.
Yeah, Dewey Decimal System. And there was this debate about whether you should be allowed to have a typewriter with spell check. Same artificial intelligence debate that we're having now. Like we're going to raise a bunch of kids who can't spell. And they kind of did, but is spelling really that important?
No, I use Grammarly.
That's which
I think that's the point right there. You're having a reliance on an external product to take care of that brain power.
And
there's no more spelling bees either.
Well,
that I know of.
And by the spell check gets it wrong all the time. I don't know how many times you've probably sent messages with like, "Are you kidding me? Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't read that," and I sent it.
Hundreds of times.
So AI is going to get it wrong sometimes too. So you have to put some eyes on it. Right. So, so I was kind of lucky to be at an inflection point, right, and be able to be spoon-fed the technology as it got better. But now it's sort of the Moore's Law thing. Like it's getting faster. So it went from spoons to cups to like garden hoses, and now we're at the fire hose sewer pipe flow of change. And thank God, like some of the folks coming up are flexible of mind to deal with it.
So what are some obstacles you would say you had to overcome to rise to where you are today?
So we were talking about obstacles before. We experienced a little bit of an obstacle getting on here, but like I kind of necessarily don't look at these things as obstacles because every time you have a challenge, you learn stuff. And I learned something today because we had a challenge. So as far as challenges go, I think, getting a new job every 2 years in the military is very hard. Especially when the jobs are kind of similar, but not really. And it's a different aspect. Like infrastructure, like airfield maintenance was one of my first jobs as a captain. So the ILS glide slope, the radars, I had teams that maintained those that fell under the umbrella of that. And then the next place we went, I did NATO communications and exercise planning. Not the same. Totally different. Right? So, but you keep putting those tools into your toolbox because you learn something every time you have to do something new. So, as far as obstacles go, I think the obstacle is learning something very quickly when you get to a new job. So, you know, either you're going to be able to do it or you can't. Obviously, 27 years, I did it well enough because I got to stay. And then they put me in charge of things. I would have to say in the civilian job that I have now, some of the obstacles are helping people understand this isn't my first job ever. It's my first civilian job, yes, but it's not the first job I've ever had. And helping them understand that 2 years' time is a lot of time to learn a job, and I can probably do more, or your expectations can probably be higher.
So when you say that, are you saying is that because those around you are like underestimating you, or they feel like, or they look at you to say, or you passing judgment to say she can't do the job? Is that what you mean? Or
No, I don't think they're passing judgment. I just don't think they have a good understanding of the what you're getting when you hire a military officer.
Well, yeah, I'll take that one. They don't know the inverse either. So I'll be the private sector guy, right? I don't know just because you worked on a radar installation. I don't have that in my company. My radar, I'm not, the same side is, are you a site reliability engineer? Right? There's no context of the cross disciplining or the cross training, right? So I hear it because I have that issue on the other side. How many of these cross disciplines do you have to learn in the private sector to do cyber operations? And is that equivalent to the military expectation? Right, because you're right. There is a raised bar, but there's also a lower bar too. Like you have to train folks to be better than you, right?
Yeah.
You have to train folks to understand these different silos: application security, offensive security, governance and risk remediation. All of those things are cross-trainable, skill sets inside cyber ops alone. Then we have the threat intel conversation. Then the malware analysis conversation. People in the private sector don't really do a good job. And I'm just speaking from a little bit of a hill here, but no one can cross-relate that to what you did in the military as my director, right?
Yeah,
or vice versa, or captain, or whatever the case may be. Like that, it's not really clear as somebody that's a lead software engineer. How does that relate to my application security need?
Yeah,
right? Or some. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and the military doesn't do a good job setting you up to explain that to a civilian company, right? So for the past 14 months, I've been trying to show them because I don't know how to articulate that, right? So any job you give me, I'll figure out how to do it. But in your case, do I take a chance on this person who doesn't know how to do this thing I really need them to do? You know what I mean?
Right. The problem, I personally and professionally, I'll put it out there, I could talk about now. I've never really seen a director mapped to my career role. So folks that might say, well, what do I do with this guy? This guy's multifaceted. He's punching up levels. To your point, it would be like we should be on the same team trying to accomplish the same objectives, right?
Right.
It would sound like that military mindset is there, but I don't think companies, from my personal and professional experience too, utilize the military mindset and skill set to get to that objective. I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen it once in my career, and that's how I got put onto cyber. But outside, I've never seen that. I've never seen that tight partnership where we have a military leader partner them with the leaders in corporate to get the cyber thing done.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how I got the job. They hired me as a sales rep, which obviously, I took the job because I'm being a military officer, you have a little bit of arrogance, right? Oh, I could do that. No problem. And yeah, I could, but it was I found myself looking to try to solve every customer's problems, not just the ones I had. And they're like, she can do these things. So now I work with a lot of the sales reps and their customers. I work with a lot of the marketing team to develop content to add that whole use case scenario flavor to it. So I think I've morphed my job into something that's more broad, kind of deal. And that's what that's what I really like about the civilian sector, is that I can influence more than just my very small job that I have at the moment. I have the ability and the access to solve bigger problems on a bigger scale, and maybe influence those solutions in a greater respect, than just, my little slice for my 2 years.
Nice.
So
I'll take the next question. It's probably a very difficult question, right? What is your coffee preference?
so today, I'm drinking a Nespresso Vivita with a B12 infusion.
Oh, that
So it's got like a
vitamin.
vitamin
Yeah,
infusion.
right.
Nice. How does that work out into the Nespresso? What you said, Vita? Is that the actual pouch for the Vita Nespresso?
Yeah, so it's like little cups. It's a pink one, and
Okay,
it's got like a
Capsules.
star
got
on it.
it.
But
Yeah.
they came out with a really good one that I like. It's has a maple leaf on it, but it's like a maple syrup infused coffee, which is pretty delicious. I kind of like it. I generally don't like flavored coffees, but my mother would be upset with me because she's like, no good self-respecting Norwegian would drink a flavored coffee.
That's good to know.
All right.
She said to me, "Oh, you're drinking your coffee like a Swede." Like,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I'm like, "Mom, is that supposed to be an insult? Because I don't know." Yeah.
All right.
So Nespresso's not espresso, but the B12 is what gives you the kick, right? The extra little boost of
Yeah.
energy.
And they
Nice.
also make one that has like double the caffeine.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, they have like the double espresso capsules. I mean, I have a machine myself. But yeah, for me, I definitely like the especially before I go to the gym in the morning. I'll start off with the double espresso scuro. I don't know if- It's like that dark brown capsule. Those are pretty good. But they have quite a few other. I'm not gonna rattle them all off now, but no, I think they have a good line of coffee to get you going.
Well, and I like
But
the machine because every cup is the same, right? So there's like
right.
kind of like, well, actually, when you go to Dunkin' Donuts, it depends on who made your coffee and how it tastes, right? So when you
No,
use your
that's
Nespresso
true.
machine,
Very true.
like it's
Yeah.
gonna taste the same every time. Like
Right.
having been in the military, you like having a very, very structured, like what you can control, you try to.
Right.
Nice.
No, I definitely get that. I
So
definitely get that.
you can control that with that machine.
Right.
I want to know if the wrapped up, I think this was Nash's wrapped up machine, has it been unwrapped and used?
It's
Was that
not,
you?
and I'll bring that
Oh
over
yeah,
here.
that's a very good question.
It has not, because now I've built a supply chain of local Maryland beans. I'm actually doing my own little coffee trail to use it in that espresso machine. It was the barista from DeLonghi. So now only the Maryland source beans can touch that machine. And I have 3 bags right now. One is from Black Acres Roastery. There's another one in Rockville. And then there's another brew that I want to track down out here called Zeke's Coffee. Those are going to be my 3 trial runs through the DeLonghi before I even open it or unwrap it.
So you're preparing.
Yes, I am preparing for a beautiful espresso roast right out of Maryland. 3-way split between 3 Maryland beans.
So are you going to have an episode dedicated to the unwrapping of the machine?
I should. I didn't think of that. I should. I have to probably make a separate. It's on the floor above me, so I'm in my basement, as we said before in the past. But it's right above me, so I have to move the setup up there. But yeah, I could do that.
Do I need to send you a lead box so we can EMP shield it?
I appreciate it.
Right.
I appreciate the American source EMPs for that coffee machine.
I'll put a big American flag on it.
Right.
That's amazing.
Maryland on the coffee machine and the American flag around the EMP shield. That'll work.
Very cool.
Because if stuff goes down, then we're all coming to your house for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I need the coffee
Gotcha.
machine to be going.
I need a whole separate solar panel for that machine.
So
We
Sarah,
make that happen.
Yes.
so Sarah, so when we're not talking about EMP shields and stuff like that, what are some of your hobbies, your interests that you like to do as you take your mind off of cybersecurity?
I don't know. No, I'm so sorry. No, so I like to ski. But
Ski, okay.
I think about this stuff like all the time. Like I do. I do find some of the geopolitical stuff fascinating. I like history a lot. I listen to quite a few history podcasts. One of my favorite ones is Rome with Matt Smith. That's a really great podcast. I like that a lot. Sorry about the squeaky dog thing going on. Can you hear that?
Yeah, no, you're good.
It's all good. Yeah.
It's Utini. I don't know if you have Star Wars fans.
Oh, that's your dog's name?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Utini. I like that.
Yeah, like, so you're one of the only people who know what that even is.
Yeah, that's the Raiders. That's the little Raiders out in the desert.
Yeah, the Jawas.
Jawas. There you go. Jawas.
Yes, it's all they say is Utini.
Yeah, if I misspoken and said Wookiees, I would have been banned for life. But yeah,
well,
the Jawas.
So looks like a Wookiee. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
the name's appropriate.
Yeah. So Utini. Anyway, I digress. Sorry about the squeaky toy thing. What were we talking about? Oh, things I like to do. So I do like.
Yeah, you left with the Rome podcast. Were there any other podcasts that you recommend?
Yeah. So let's see. I'll tell you what's on my library. Those are my books. So I listened to quite a few books on tape, but like the Rome podcast is one of my favorites. So When in Rome, Raising Standards, The Fall of Rome with Dan. They changed hosters. Now it's Patrick is hoster. But The Fall of Rome is really interesting because it talks about all the events leading up to the fall of Rome, from when they started splitting the East and the West between two emperors, and how the East Empire of Rome lasted a lot longer than the West, and what happened with, the German tribes and everything else. I mean, if you look at it, like, you kind of got to look to the past to see what's happening in the future. I don't want to be in the fall of the United States, though. I hope that happens much later, kind of time frame. But it's very interesting. Queens of England, that's another very, very interesting podcast when it talks about the Queens of England. By the way, Queen Elizabeth was a remarkable woman. I mean, never did a social misstep in her entire life, which she lived a really long time. And I don't know anybody who has never made a public guffaw. But she never did. I mean, as a young girl, went toe to toe with Winston Churchill. Like, how intimidating would that be to be in your early 20s and having to sit across from Winston Churchill and tell him, no, I'm not doing things that way. I mean, incredible, and just an incredible woman. So yeah, those are some of the ones that I listen to. Dan Carlin's Hardcore History is very good, but the episodes are very long, like a couple hours. So you got to have some time. Dan Snow's history. Dan Snow isn't the host of all of these, but he does compile a lot of the best history podcasts, so that you can go there and find a topic and listen to it. So he's very good. And then the other one I really like, which you guys are probably going to be like, roll your eyes, is which is Dressed, which is the history of fashion.
I dig that.
It's actually pretty cool.
I need a little help with that.
Well, understand why we wear what we wear.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's kind of, yeah. Anyway, it's actually pretty good. That's
cool. Yeah.
The gals who do that podcast it's not all frivolous. It's very rooted in like actual history. So
yeah. You mentioned books too. I heard you have a book preference.
So I like leadership books. Nice. I like nonfiction. another eye roller for you is probably going to be like the Matthew McConaughey book that came out, Green Lights, is actually quite entertaining. He reads
I gotta
it,
check
but
that
it's
out.
quite,
No, I gotta check
it's
that out.
pretty entertaining.
Okay, Green Lights.
Yeah. He talks about when he was in high school, he did a study abroad in Australia and got put with a family that was very weird. And for Matthew McConaughey to say this family was very weird, they must have been very, very weird.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you know, anything published by SOCOM admirals is good. Like usually very good.
Mm.
You know, but
like 2034.
Right. Well, Sarah, this was definitely an amazing conversation. Definitely enjoyed our time here, as always. So, but before we close out, you have anything you want to share with our audience?
No, I just first I want to share with the audience that the both of you are amazing. What you do on the podcast, what you do on the podcast is fantastic. I enjoy listening to your episodes, and I especially enjoy the sort of format that you've put together. So I thank you for including me, and it's been great. It's been great meeting the both of you, and I hope we can continue the conversation because time flies when I'm talking with you both. And also too, like Nash saying that he thinks I'm a video game character. That just plays right into my ego.
Right. We got to get single source attribution on that.
So it just makes me want to go out and buy like a cool superhero video game, outfit.
I think that's what you got to do. The next episode, you got to wear like a superhero T-shirt or something.
Right.
Yeah. So like in my mind fantasy, yeah, like I'm saving the world with with ones and zeros.
That's it. One mission at a time, right?
That's right.
That's awesome.
One microgrid at a time.
Yeah.
One miniature nuclear fusion plant at a time.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that's great. No, but thank you, and thank you to you, those watching. Thank you for tuning into the Cyber Coffee Hour. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on all of our platforms. You can also find the Cyber Coffee Hour on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. That's a wrap. We're out of here. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.